Evening all, welcome back to Factorio. So, I have decided I want a fast ship. I want it, and I want you to imagine me screaming and kicking on the floor of a supermarket right now. Picture it, the shame. There's nothing worse than a grown man literally having a temper tantrum on the floor. It makes you look away in disgust. I've got out of a few fights by doing something like that, but that's another story. So what we're doing today is this is a new ship. I'm designing something here more so to be beating the speed record. So remember a while ago I did drag racing. You may or may not remember that. If you haven't watched the video, go and have a look. It's quite interesting because we managed to get Strangely Beige to, I think it was something like 12, 13, 1400 kilometers a second, which is pretty quick. So it was actually going from like Vulcanus to the edge of the solar system in like 2 minutes, which is pretty rapid. Want to try and replicate that, but the thing is, I don't want to just do a copy paste of Strangely Beige. So let me walk you through what you see here. This is my attempt to build an try and get it right. Basically a self-sufficient, no need for an asteroid ring system. So here we have, for example, sponson turrets that just collect iron rocks, drop them into the grinder. The grinder then produces iron. Iron gets turned into plate. Plate gets turned into ammo. Ammo gets fed into those two guns. It's self-contained, very much like your stepdad's condo. This is kind of designed to be something that just sits completely alone and basically works. And the reason I wanted to do this is because I don't know if it works. I'm genuinely intrigued to see if this is actually a concept. The whole ship operates like this. We'll look at the front in just a moment, but this sort of starts to kind of, bridge a gap of where I think Strangely Beige is going wrong, because it's producing an ungodly amount of resource that just gets ejected into space. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I want to try and produce a ship that just works. Firstly, I mean, here are my design criterion. First, it has to look like a ship. Everything that I see people produce in Factorio is a moving oil rig. And it looks cool, I've got to admit, I do like that. But I would like to have a ship that actually looks like a spaceship. It's sort of streamlined. And again, I would point out there is no such thing as a spaceship other than rocketry. But what I mean is kind of sci-fi version of it. So, I'm thinking 2010, the Discovery, is it? That kind of long, spindly ship. As long as you've got defences, you don't need a huge amount of platform. Lots of engines at the back. It's that kind of thing. So the design here is very much to try and minimise weight. Make it so that if you need a resource, it's sourced and procured locally, provided to the machines, and off it goes. There you go. That hurt my brain, literally like that. And why am I doing this? Because I want to. Very much like Daphne and Celeste, who, funny enough, headlined Glastonbury, or didn't headline. They were on at Glastonbury, I think it was, or was it the Reading Festival? And basically people threw bottles of urine at them. Not very nice thing to do to two young girls, but rather amusing. It's like getting a load of sort of poppy, teeny tweeny kind of bands and putting them on before Megadeth or Napalm Death. Not quite right, but anyway, it's very funny. Go and have a look at the YouTube. It's sad, but it's also amusing. But there we go. So what I'm trying to do is really just make something that's different. And again, I'm not afraid to experiment, as your mum keeps telling me. I'm quite happy to give experimentation a go. And I think what I really want to try and do with this particular platform is have a lot of the kind of spiritual drive, if that makes sense, of Strangely Beige. But so, lots of staged engines, etc. And I think it looks rather swish. I quite like the look of that. And we'll zoom in and have a look at it in just a moment. But I think certainly the design criteria is trying to kind of build something a bit different. So there we go. That's the premise of what you're looking at today. And then by having those kind of resources grabbed as they are needed, means it creates some very interesting new design challenges. Let me give you the first one. The first one is that as resources are shot at the front, it then creates a wave behind it. So you can't just have you have to have a ship in an inverted V format, an arrow, because otherwise things further down never get any resources. So everything is slightly being pushed out as it goes. Very much Imperial Star Destroyer style of design here. And I think that's quite important because it otherwise you never get resources to key things. So this attempt to try and do something that's a little bit different, not using really too many belts, trying to kind of cluster things, I think has produced an entirely different way of doing spaceships, and I quite like it. So here we have, for example, the first part of the fuel being created. I think this is the liquid fuel, I forget. The oxidizer is the blue one, isn't it? So what it's doing is the grabbers are grabbing, dropping them directly into grinders, which are then basically getting rid of anything they don't need, putting the other things into stuff that they need. So there you go, that's the liquid ozone, I believe. And they're operating in a very kind of staged way. So the front piece is starving the second piece below it. So what we have to do, and you'll see that towards the end of the video, is we start to push things out. And it creates basically sponson arms. And I always like that. I always think ships that have kind of arms. Think Babylon 5, the Earth Destroyers with their spinning middle section. Loved all that. That's the sort of thing that I could see this ship kind of doing. And it's been an interesting challenge, to be honest, because one of the kind of main things about this ship is that it doesn't have any waste, in theory. It grabs what it needs and then it holds it. So these arms, they capture, what, 50, 60 units of rock, and then they hold it. They don't do any more. And there's quite a bit of logic being applied here as well. And it basically means that it then takes what it needs and then doesn't take any more. So it then should, in theory, mean that there's resources further down the line. Oh, breaks my brain. But I spent probably about 2 hours one night just literally tinkering with this, trying to kind of work it out. Is it feasible? Is it possible? I like the way it looks. To me, this looks spaceshipy with pipes and machinery on it. I do think it looks quite good. It's fusion powered, so we don't really need those solar panels. They're probably more just because there was space. And we do tend to move them around. What I found is that, just to cut to the chase, not enough fuel being produced. So you either, here's a design choice really. I had a design choice to either massively upscale fuel production or create silos, create huge storage tanks for this. And I think the better is the latter. And we will see if that's right. Only because legendary rocket engines, they burn fuel. They drink fluids quicker than your mum. It just wrote itself, that one, didn't it? And I think that's the thing, is that actually that may be the right thing to do. But once you've done your first shot, you're then going to have to sit and basically rebuild fuel, or reproduce the fuel. So we'll see if it works. Again, we do look at some of the fluid charts in this. Again, it's a game with charts that amazes me, really. I mean, it's like EVE Online with its Excel spreadsheets. Some of those Excel spreadsheets made my career, literally. I got so good at Excel because of EVE Online. I actually got promotions for it. People would be like, wow, this guy's good. And they'd be like, no, I just like to tinker with Excel. So cut slightly fast forward. We've now started to push the arms out a bit. You can see this is towards the middle. So this is the second stage after the hub. And this is producing the liquid fuel. I noticed, like I say, it was starved of resources, mostly ice. So what we had to do is just push those arms out. And I like this. It starts to kind of build a much more spaceship feel, which is the technical term. However, these sponson turrets now become quite critical because firstly, they're not working. So we need to figure out why they're not working. But you see the process. So, it drops into the grinder to the foundry, or the smelter into the factory, then it makes things. I don't know. If you can make this any more compact, then A, I tip my hat to you, sir. And B, share it with me, because I want to know if we can really make... Now, I don't mind doubling up because, to be honest, the grabber grabs so much. Again, insert joke here about your dad. And it just produces incredible amounts of rock, really, because this thing's constantly moving between the planets. Therefore, it might be worth doubling up some of the grinders, some of the smelters and so on. So have a play and share with me what your view is. But as you can see, it kind of works. But again, this is probably because it's mostly legendary stuff. It just produced so quickly. So I don't know. The concept so far seems to work. It doesn't look very pretty, but again, it just needs a bit of sort of tinkering. But I am very impressed. And there's a few things here. So you see, I've had to move the arm down because basically it can't eject the spare rock in the grinder. Now you could do clever things to kind of reinsert it, but you don't need it. You really don't, because you're flying past an infinite source, a river of resources, you might as well just keep pulling from that river rather than worrying about the little bit of thing that chinked off the bottom of the of the block. You know what I mean? And I think that's why I would totally do that. But let's see. I mean, this so far is very untested, but I would say it's worked pretty well so far. And again, it does require legendary. If you're trying to do this without legendary, probably don't, because it won't work. That one grabbing arm, you know, the speed of the red inserters without being legendary, it's not going to be great. So there we go. Hopefully that makes sense. This so far has worked quite well. Doesn't help us get to Aquilo, but that's a problem for tomorrow. This is very much an inner solar system ship for now. But again, the design of this is speed. The whole reason we're doing it is speed. So I think my biggest kind of concern with ships like this is that they tend to kind of not have the power. They don't produce enough resources. They don't have the power itself. Most of the concern I have here is ammo. So really ammo is going to be a huge issue if we don't. I mean, just one rock will blow this up. And I do think I am being driven more towards the V-shaped ship, the Star Destroyer style, because then you have this constant, so here, just watch, it creates still a very narrow column of resources, whereas I think maybe it is better just to go wider and wider and wider, but I don't think that helps your speed. So you see the speed here is what, 600? It's not great. It's because we're starved of fuel almost immediately, and this is one of the main issues of this whole build, is actually, do we just, you know, and you can see I'm trying to figure out where should I put more silos. I guess the realization comes very quickly that narrow column in the middle is too small, it's too narrow. We need to widen this thing, add lots of tanks of fuel, and really just allow this thing to stockpile over time. Now, because we have legendary like beacons and etc., I don't know if we actually need to do too much more fuel production, because it's producing, what, 1,500 units of each thing, oxidizer and liquid fuel. It's producing them at an incredible rate that I don't actually think we need too many more, maybe a couple more, but you see my point. And again, things like this, you know, I don't know if we need more turrets, because that front little configuration there, which is 2 grabbers, grabbing iron, again, that's a nice little front turret sort of setup there. It deals with most things, and except, you know, things that need rockets. I think that's going to be enough for the ship. And then all the way down, I think the widening is going to be something we have to do. But there we go. So I think this is kind of an interesting take on ships, given that everything I've produced up to this date has been a slab with factories on it. This is me now trying to build a machine that isn't a platform. It's a very different thing for me, and I didn't want the loops all the time. Like I like the loop. I think some of my quality ship designs, I love the little kind of wedges, but I wanted this to look like a proper ship, to have that kind of rocket feel. I didn't want to kind of grab resources all the time. So here I've made a slight exception to my rules. So previously, before we were rejecting ice out, what I've done here is just wire it in so that it doesn't do that anymore, because we just don't have enough ice being captured. It's likely because we're in the inner solar system still, but this started to become a problem. So again, what you're seeing here is me working out a kind of clever way, not that clever really, to try and make it so that it would produce ice, and then when there's ice in the grinders, it would stop providing it. So anyway, you'll see that as we progress. Back and forward to Vulcanus is definitely the issue as well. It's just not really working. So I think the problem is you just don't have a lot of ice this way. I think I need to probably go between Fulgora and Vulcanus. Those are the two. But anyway, this is a moot point. So overall, I'm quite pleased with it so far. Again, everything required beacons and modules. We had to do a little bit of kind of work with the production modules, because productivity rather modules, just to kind of help some of the aspects. There's an awful lot of balancing. You're balancing one where you have a surplus of other, you can speed that up. You can then balance another where you maybe don't, put a beacon near it. You know, I like that. I think this is probably one of the nicest things about Factorio, is you can balance and tinker and tailor and use modules to basically speed things up. Because something like you see here would not be possible without that capability. And I think almost all of this is legendary as well. Without that, you're going to have a bad time. It's just not going to work, which is an issue. So fast forward here, again, we've now got some beacons in. You can see we've added some beacons, simple really, but it has helped massively. So each run starts to improve. It's a kind of evolving, incremental, improving design. And as you can see, it's slowly widening as well. So here we have, iron or rather iron rocks are plentiful, so that's why they're recessed still, but all the other things are starting to just slightly poke out a bit, because as we go further down the ship, it's starting to turn into more of a wedge, which is interesting to me. I mean, it gets to a point, basically, as you saw in the little snippet at the start, that we basically have sponsons all the way out, real long extending towers that end in like a collection of grabbers. It's cool. I so enjoyed doing this. It was a wonderful cleansing of the palette after doing bricks. Building bricks in space has been fun, and it's very straightforward actually, but this to me was a much more higher technical challenge, because as you can see, everything is weaved and woven in, it's all plumbed in correctly, and that was a real challenge to do, because I didn't really have anything to go off. I just sort of started thinking, well, let's build a fusion reactor. Well, what's the smallest fusion reactor I've done? Well, with 8 modules. Well, that's no good, because 8 modules is redunculous really, because that then means you've got too much power. So it's trying to kind of build and simplify and modularize everything. As you can see, the engines are spluttering here, and this is again further realization the fuel is wrong. We just not producing enough fuel. And it's only when I actually started to interrogate, like I say, the fluid charts. Again, what game do you know where you can literally look at the fluid charts? It's like Chandler's report in Friends, the weenus report. The weenus isn't looking good. And I love that, because I went and checked my reports, and I could see that whatever fuel we produce is then consumed. So even if we massively overproduce to 500,000 units in a minute, it then burns 500,000 units. These legendary engines are no joke. So it starts to become, and you can see we're adding even more beacons and modules and so on. And it really is an example of how this game just rocks, because it's the design, it's the constant, okay, this is a problem, this is now a bottleneck, what do we do? Okay, that's now solved, what's the next bottleneck? And I genuinely was very entertained while I did this video. I started to realize as well that we didn't need speed modules in all of the fuel production as well, because now by putting legendary beacons with I guess legendary tier 2 speed modules, because tier 3 are expensive, so we only use them in the most drastic of requirements, which this could be. So it might be that actually we do that, but at the moment this works. But again, to kind of generate a spoiler, it still doesn't work enough. Whatever fuel we produce is not enough. But I think that starts to get me to an interesting point, because I would love to balance the ridiculous, 1 million units of fuel in a minute. Let's say we could produce that in a minute. So you start to then work back 1,500 units every cycle, with a productivity of X, and so on and so on. So it starts to become a bit more of a technical challenge. And really kind of what I found here is that the buffer wasn't enough. Just having 50,000 units of fuel, or whatever, 100,000, it's not enough. You need to have something that's much more voluminous, much like MC Hammer's voluminous trousers that he seemed to wear. This seems to be, I think, the challenge. So a lot of what you now see in the video is really, and again, here are my fluid charts, my weenus. Enjoy my weenus. As you can see, it's just producing fuel, but whatever we produce is immediately burned, which is, I think, the challenge of this whole thing in a subtet. What I do like is the fact that it's the grabbing of resources and then stopping works well as well. So that's actually been quite a fun thing to do. I wish I had the ability to do direct insertion. And again, not talking about your mum. I was thinking about the way certain mods I've used before, they just have those throughput inserters. That would be nice here as well. The ability not to have to use arms. But again, legendary, it's all fine, but it would be nice to have sort of a grabber that could immediately be cushioned next to a grinder, and then they work. They just connect. I'd like that. So if you know of a mod like that, let me know. I'm not going to use it on this run through, but I would just love to play with something like that. So you could actually say if it's connected, it just feeds through. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? I think a lot of the ARM stuff starts to get a bit old after a while. It would be nice not to have that. As you can see, another sponson turret there. That looks pretty cool. Again, it works. It does work. It doesn't look very pretty, but it produces ammo way quicker than it burns. So this seems to work. So I'm quite pleased with it. Fusion reactor was very uneventful. Nothing really to report there. Just worked. And I think a lot of what I'm trying to do here is really just work out how best now, if this is our preliminary design, how best to proceed. Now, interesting note, you see the legendary pump there? You don't need that. That slows everything down. Like, I learned this last time and I made the same mistake again. And I found that and you need them there. So those numerous legendary pumps, they're obviously important because it is about chucking the fuel into the engines. And I think I need even more than we have there. But the simple fact that we don't have enough stored fuel is definitely the issue. We'd never really probably be able to match 1 million units of fuel in a minute. So it's better just to have like 3 million units stockpiled and then go for it. Because the reality is you only need fuel for about a minute or two of burn to get to the edge of the solar system. None of this works yet. I'll be quite clear with you. There's still a bit of a journey here. But I do think there is definitely something in this style of design. Post in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this, because I really relish trying something a little bit different. And I think this is the kind of thing I had in my head when I first saw the platforms of Factorio. And what I ended up building was just a giant disc or square that moved. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I just want something that you can look at and get some joy from. It should spark joy a la Marie Kondo. And it should make you think, yes, that's nice. I like the look of it. It looks good. It's fast. And this is kind of my midlife crisis platform, really. And I think that's kind of the drive is what I'm trying to build here. And I think there's so many ways you could do these things. And it's actually quite interesting, really. Because as I watch this footage again, I'm realizing how much of it was a pure emergent thing. So here I'm starting to realize that they look quite good on little skinny, spindly arms. I like that. So it starts this whole design process of, right, let's push them further out. Let's start to kind of build a V formation. Let's have these kind of little towers that pop out. Oh, insanely exciting. Like, you know, I can't remember the last time I had such a good evening like this. I think that shows my age slightly, but it was rather amusing and rather fun. It definitely gave me a smile. And I think an awful lot of the platforms that I see in Reddit and that, I see lots of mega bases. I see lots of cool looking things, designs, machines. I am yet to see many mega ships that make me go, oh my days, I want to build that. And I think it's because, I mean, look at that, it's great. I like this. I like the way it looks. It's got a kind of like a style, a sleekness to it. It would be called the HMS Sword of Truth or something like that. I just think, you know, that to me, I haven't seen yet. And I think it's because people build very effective ships, and I mean like really effective ships, like a giant, like, you know, moving anvil or hammer through space that can go all the way to the shattered planet without even looking at it. Off it goes and it comes back. But the thing is, it looks like two rectangles literally had a baby and that produced some sort of weird hammer shaped thing. And I think that's, I don't know, there's something about it that just makes me go, no, that doesn't look good. It works, and I'm sure it's wonderful, but it doesn't look good. And an awful lot of my mantra is, I want it to look good. I want it to actually, I don't mind if it's like, as long as it functions, but it doesn't have to function amazingly well, but I just want it to work. So there we go. Here begins the age of the sponson turret. As you can see, we're slowly pushing them out. This I think I love. I cannot tell you. And in the next video, because again, we've already wibbled for a long time here, but in the next video, I'll show you the next step of this, which is all sponsons It's getting quicker, so it's going really quick, but look at the consumption here. It's pretty crazy. This thing is consuming fluids faster than your mum. I've already made that joke, but you get my point. And I think it's quite an interesting challenge. So, you know, post in the comments, let me know your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed that. Join us next time where I'll show you what happens next.